Yesterday, Axios came out with an exclusive about how the White House ignored a judge's order to turn back deportation flights. A little here, the Trump administration says it ignored a Saturday court order to turn around two plane loads of alleged Venezuelan gang members because the flights were over international waters and therefore the ruling didn't apply. Two senior officials tell Axios. There's a lot here. Thankfully, we have Mark Caputo on to talk about the piece, talk about whether or not the Trump administration is actually looking to defy court orders and what this all means. Mark Caputo, thank you so much for joining the channel. I gotta say, this piece of reporting you have here is just incredible. It's about the White House and how it seems like they're in conflict about whether or not they're ignoring a court order. It seems like some of them want to ignore and some of them want to pretend like they're not.
What this kind of comes down to is the definition of what defy and ignore means. Because by their own admission, on the record and on background, they had planes in the air deporting Venezuelans and others. While the planes were in the air, a judge said, turn those planes around. And they discussed it. And they said, oh, the planes are over international waters. There's no jurisdiction. It's too late. So the planes continued.
But they were over the Gulf of America, right?
Well, technically, if it's in international waters, according to AP style, well, actually, what used to be AP style, it would still technically be Gulf of Mexico, but they're right off the Yucatan. And so are they really defying a court order that could reasonably be construed as legitimate? People will debate this because there is a question about, could the planes have actually turned around? Could they have been able to be refueled? Once you've actually begun the process of deporting someone and sent them international waters, does the domestic judge's ruling still apply? These are legitimate questions. So ignore is probably a better verb, but they still don't necessarily like that. But, we'll agree to disagree. What's not in dispute is a court said do this, and the Trump administration didn't do this. Now, while it had its reasons, you can call that defying, you can call that ignoring or whatever, but those are just...
Yeah, and then even in your piece here, there's someone who says, Mark S. Zaid, who says, court order defied, first of many, as I've been warning, and start of a true constitutional crisis. That to me is kind of like where it feels like it is. I know they want to pretend like that's not the case, but a judge said something, they're choosing not to do it, and they seem to be reveling in it as well.
Well, that's one of the things that you often find in politics is sometimes you'll see two contradictory opinions espoused that are simultaneously held, and they have equal convictions for both. So it sort of, I don't know, depends on the context. But I don't think this is as clear as the Trump administration setting out to consciously defy a court. For instance, if the Trump administration was specifically planning to do that, they'd do it now. There's nothing stopping them if they want to defy the court actively, consciously, willfully, to put people on a plane and ship them out right now, despite the judge's orders. They're not doing it. There are some gray areas working here.
What is the act called? The Illegal Aliens Act or whatever, some like old
Alien Enemies Act.
Alien Enemies Act.
Mm-hmm.
Just setting that aside, that he's using this old wartime law. It's like you wrote here, and it's just one sentence, but it's not even clear that everyone on that plane is a gang member. And I think that to me is a big deal.
Correct. Of the roughly 238, 237 of them, I think about 137 were classified, accused of being Tren de Aragua Venezuelan gangbangers. About another 100 were Venezuelans in another stage of the deportation situation that didn't fall under the Alien Enemies Act classification. And then there was a few dozen more Salvadorans who were deported as well.
Well, I think like the classification doesn't even matter as much as the fact that folks who are in this country are supposed to have the same constitutional protections as everyone else. Now, I'm being a pundit. I know you're a reporter, but
Yep.
That to me feels just like that. To me seems to be like the bigger problem with this. Court orders being defied or ignored aside, is that people are still supposed to have constitutional rights and due process. And that to me is the bigger problem with all of this, is that that's just not happening. It does not seem to, that's one of the reasons why they went this route.
They say we are not actively trying to defy court orders. That's not what we're doing. Now, they do sort of have the luxury of knowing they have a sympathetic U.S. Supreme Court. A lot of these are big, heady issues and heading their way. One of the things that is driving the Trump White House crazy is the fact that a judge, such as in this case, can issue these sort of orders that totally hamstring an administration where they think that the judge doesn't have jurisdiction. So these are sort of weighty, heady measures that they think will ultimately wind up before the Supreme Court, where they will win either at the appellate level or at the Supreme Court level.
So they're just like, whatever, we'll just go through the process because my Supreme Court's going to rubber stamp it. So whatever. Thank you so much to Mark Caputo for coming on and giving so much insight around his great reporting. And I'm really grateful he came on the channel. And just after him and I stopped talking, Donald Trump was asked about this very thing. And here's what he had to say.
Now, people from mental institutions, that's an invasion. They invaded our country. So this isn't, in that sense, this is war. In many respects, it's more dangerous than war because, you know, in war, they have uniforms. You know who you're shooting at. You know who you're going after. These are people that came out, they're walking our street.
It's not war. We know what war is. War is between a country and another country. These are not people in a country. And by the way, not for nothing, Donald Trump looks like shit. I'm happy to say that. I know the mainstream media won't. I will say it. He looks fucking terrible. And here is Homan, who is his Tom Homan, who is his, border czar, talking about this as well, and how they determine who is a gang member.
That should be a celebration. We removed terrorists from this country, and I stand by what the president did. I support 100%.
How do you determine whether somebody is a gang member? What criteria do you use?
To various investigations.
Various investigations.
A lot of the ways we do it, it's law enforcement sensitive. I'm not going to share all that with you, but whether through social media, through the activities, through their criminal records here and abroad. So this was done a very. The review of this issue was at the highest level I've seen. And I think, again, I stand by everything we did this weekend. And I think the president keeping his promise to the American people.
Does anyone actually believe that this man right here is doing any sort of investigation to determine if anyone's a gang member? Or are they just finding people who they assume are migrants who do not have citizenship, and they're just deporting them without any oversight, justification, and certainly without any due process? So we're going to keep watching this. This is important. This is the slide to authoritarianism we talk about all the time on the channel. And I do think that it's critical we pay attention. But we're going to keep watching this. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.